Hello everyone and welcome. I'm Jordan at Afterburner Automation, and today we're going to be walking through the first of 4 courses on the if package. By the end of this course, you should be able to use the if package to give your bot different paths to take based on whether files and folders exist, allowing your bot to make simple decisions at runtime. This capability opens up a lot of possibilities for us moving forward from this point, so the bots that we'll be creating together will start to look a little more like something you might actually use in the real world. The if package is the first package that contains powerful conditionals, which can allow your bots to do different things based on different conditions that you set. Sometimes you'll hear these referred to as if statements or if-then statements. The basic idea is that if a certain condition is met, then your bot only performs certain actions. We use if-then logic in our own lives multiple times every day. For instance, a simple example is, if I'm tired, then I will go to sleep. Another way to think about this is in terms of cause and effect. In our example, sleep is the effect that only occurs when the cause occurs first, which is that I'm tired. We can rephrase this as, I go to sleep because I'm tired. If the cause doesn't occur, meaning if I'm not tired, then the effect also doesn't occur. I won't go to sleep. This type of conditional or cause and effect relationship between our code and the state of the objects we're interacting with allows us to set up our bot so that it only performs certain actions under certain conditions. For instance, in this course, I'll teach you how to use the if package to check if a file or folder exists, and then perform some type of action based on that check. If a file doesn't exist, then create that file. If a folder does exist, then delete that folder. This course is the beginning of learning how to make our bots work smarter and not harder. So if you don't pay attention to any other course, pay attention to this one so that you get a solid foundation in these concepts. I don't know about you, but all of this sounds pretty exciting to me, so let's get started. Make sure that you log into the control room and navigate to the automation section like we've been doing. Then, navigate to the Citizen Developer folder and create a new subfolder called If101. Once you've created that folder, we're ready to get started. Let's start by creating a new bot within our new If101 folder. For this bot, let's pretend that we're a teacher that needs to track grades for our students, as well as a master list of all the students in our class. To do this, we'll build a bot that asks for a student's name, the type of assignment, and the grade they received. If we haven't started tracking this student's grades already, we'll create a new file to track their assignments and grades. But no matter what, we'll add their grade to the student file so that we can track it. With all of that in mind, let's call this bot CD13-student grades. Then click on Create and Edit to get to the RPA workspace. As always, I'll be changing to list view, which is my preferred view, and then we'll start with the easy part, asking the user for the student's info. We need 3 pieces of information: their name, the type of assignment, and their grade, and we already know how to get those by using the prompt package. So let's start by grabbing the prompt for value command from the actions sidebar and dragging it over to the main workspace. We'll fill out the prompt window caption like normal by using the bot name, CD13-student grades. And then we can ask for the student's name by putting enter student's first name into the prompt message field. We'll pretend for simplicity's sake that all the students have unique first names, but if we wanted to, we could make this bot more complicated and ask for first and last names. Now, normally we've been assigning the outputs of our prompt commands to different variables, but this time I want to try something different. Next to the assign the value to a variable dropdown, there's an X in parentheses with a plus sign next to it. That icon is the create variable icon, and let's go ahead and click that. The create variable window will appear, and you can see that the type section is set to string and grayed out because that's the type of variable this command needs. All we need to do is give our new variable a name, and since this variable will hold the student's name, let's call this variable name. You can ignore the other options on here until the Junior Developer Learning track, and press Create and Select when you're ready. You'll see that this puts our new name variable as the variable that our prompt value will be assigned to. Now, we just need to ask for the assignment type and grade. So let's click Save in the top right, and then copy and paste this command twice. Let's click on the second prompt command so we can see the options in the right sidebar, and change the prompt message to Enter Assignment Type. We also need to make a new variable for this, so let's again click the Create Variable icon to the right of the dropdown. We're asking for the assignment type here, so let's name this one Assignment and press Create and Select. Now we can finish up the third prompt command by changing the prompt message to read Enter Assignment Grade. Again, we'll need a new variable for this, so let's click the Create Variable icon. Since we're asking for the grade, let's call this one Grade and press Create and Select. Okay, so now we have all of our prompts set up to receive information, but what do we do with them? Well, first of all, we know we want to store this information in the student's file, so let's get the log to file command from the Actions sidebar on the left and drag it over underneath our 3 prompt commands. For the file path, let's click Browse, like we have for previous courses, and when the Select File window appears, we'll navigate to the desktop folder. Let's create a new folder called CD13-Student Grades. And then open up that folder. From there, just like in previous courses, we'll go up to the folder field at the top of the window and click to the right of our new folder name so that it's highlighted. Then we'll press Ctrl-C to copy that path, and after that, we can press Cancel to close this window. Now we can paste that path into the File Path field using Ctrl-V, and then we can give this file a name by putting a backslash and a file name. But what should we name it? To easily differentiate each file, let's use the student name that we got from our first prompt. Once we have the backslash after our CD13 folder, press F2 to bring up the Insert a Value window. Then select Name from the dropdown and press Yes Insert. You should now see the name at the end of the file path, and all we need to do is finish this part by adding .csv at the end, so that it knows what type of file we want to create. For the text to log field, we want to put the assignment type and grade, so let's use F2 to first insert the assignment variable. Once that's done, we'll put a comma, then press F2 again to add the grade variable. When you're finished, you should see assignment and grade separated by a comma. We can leave the other options as they are because we don't need a timestamp in our CSV, and we want to add the assignments and grades to the file if it's already there so that the list can continue to grow each time we run this bot. Now we have the basics of this bot written, but our log to file command is just logging the data, and we don't have any headers for our CSV so that we know what each column is for. Let's fix that by copying our log to file command and pasting it right below itself. Now we can open up the old log to file command on line 4 and change it up so that it logs headers. We can do this by removing the $signs around our assignment and grade variables in the Enter Text to Log section. This changes those values to the actual words assignment and grade instead of the variable values. So now our bot is logging the header and the data to our students file, but if we run this bot more than once for the same student, it'll append the header again, which we don't want. We also can't just set it to overwrite because that would overwrite the data we already have in that student file. The only time we want to log a header is the first time that we log to the file. And another way to say that is, if the file doesn't exist, log the header. That sounds to me like something that can be handled by the if package. So let's scroll through the actions sidebar on the left and open up the if package. Inside, we'll see three options: if, else if, and else. I'll deal with those two else commands in our next bot, but for now, drag the if command in between our prompt command on line 3 and the log to file command on line 4. You'll notice that this command looks a little bit different from the others, because it creates a space in between itself and the next command where you can drag actions. The actions that we put in here will only happen if the condition of the if statement occurs. Before we get to that though, let's take a look at the right sidebar and see the options we can use. Our first option is the condition dropdown. Let's open that up and scroll down to File. You'll see that there are a few options under that category, but we want the File Does Not Exist option. Go ahead and click on that, and we'll see that now we have two options that are specific for this condition. Let's start with file path. We're trying to do something when our student file doesn't exist, so let's go back to our log to file command and copy the file path so that we can paste it into this field. You'll notice that when you click away from this command and come back to it, our condition is collapsed, but all you need to do is click the caret to expand it and reveal those options again. Once you've pasted in the file path, we can take a look at the second option, which allows us to tell the bot to check if the file exists or not for a certain number of seconds. This is a good option to use if it's possible that it could take some time for a file to exist, but we don't expect our file to be created until after this point, so we can leave that at 0 seconds. Before we move on, you'll notice below our file does not exist condition that there's an add condition option. This option allows us to add multiple conditions to this if statement, but we're going to wait until the Junior Developer Learning track to go over that, so we can skip that option for now. Now we need to decide what happens if our student CSV file doesn't exist. Earlier, we had decided that if the file doesn't exist, we need to log the file headers. So let's drag the log to file command on line 5 that creates the headers into the area just below the if statement that says drag an action here. You'll see that it automatically indents our log to file command so that we can tell that this is inside of our if statement. On top of that, to the left of the if command on line 4, you'll see a little caret. If we click that caret, the command collapses, hiding the commands inside. We can click it again to expand it, but I wanted to show you this so that you could see one of the really neat features of A360. There are other commands that do the same thing, and that caret makes it really easy to tell what is and isn't included in the if command. So now we have our bot logging the headers, but only if the file doesn't already exist, and then it adds the assignment and grade to it. Looks like we're ready to test this bot, so let's click Run. Once the first prompt appears, let's enter a name that we can remember later. I'm going to use Alice, and then press OK. For the assignment type, let's put Homework, and then press OK. Finally, for the assignment grade, let's say that Alice did really well and put 100, and then press OK. The bot ends, and then we can minimize the Chrome screen and go to our desktop to the CD13 folder so that we can see the results. We can see here that we have a file called alice.csv. Let's open that. Inside, we'll see our two columns with the headers of assignment and grade, and that each column holds the values we gave it. When you're done examining this file, close it down, head back to the RPA workspace, and let's run this bot again. This time, I want you to give a different name for the student. I'm going to use Bob. For assignment type, we'll again put homework. And then for the grade, we'll say that Bob had a really bad day and got a 0. Once the bot ends, we'll go to our CD13 folder again on the desktop. This time, we'll see that now there are two files, alice.csv and bob.csv. If we open bob.csv, we can see again that the headers were built and our data was logged correctly. So let's close bob.csv and head back to the workspace. We'll run the bot one more time. This time, let's give it one of the same names we gave it earlier, Alice. But for assignment type, let's put quiz. And when the grade prompt appears, let's say that Alice didn't do quite as well this time and put 72. The bot ends, and again we'll head back to our CD13 folder, where we'll open our alice.csv file. Notice that this time it didn't add another header because the file already existed, but it did add Alice's new assignment and grade below the other one. That means our bot worked as expected. Great job! Let's close this folder, head back to Chrome, and close the bot's success message and the RPA workspace so that we're back in the control room. For our next bot, let's pretend that we work for a store that wants to give its customers a gift on every third visit. For this, we need to keep track of the number of visits that each customer has, and on the third visit, we want to notify the salesperson to hand out the free gift to the customer. Let's start by creating a new bot. We'll call this one CD14-third visit gift, and then press Create and Edit to go to the RPA workspace. The first thing we'll need to do is use our prompt for value command to get the customer's name. Let's drag a prompt for value command over to the workspace, where we'll set the prompt window caption to the bot's name, CD14-third visit gift. And for the prompt message, we'll put enter customer ID number. Since we're only going to be using ID numbers here, we can assign the value of this prompt to the sample string variable. Now that we know which customer is visiting the store, we need a way to keep track of how many times they visited. Let's start by making a folder to hold the number of visits for each customer by finding the folder create command in the actions sidebar underneath the folder package, and then dragging that below our prompt. We'll get the folder path in the same way that we did in the Folder 101 course, by opening File Explorer and navigating to the desktop. On the desktop, we're going to create a new folder called CD14-third visit gift. Once that's created, we'll navigate inside the folder, click to the right of the new folder name in the address field at the top of the Explorer window, and copy that path. Back in our bot, we'll paste that folder path into the folder field, but then we need to add a backslash and insert the variable by pressing F2, or clicking the X in parentheses. Then we'll add our sample string variable to the end of the folder path. Before we move on though, let's think about this for a second. We're creating a folder to store customer visits here, but if that folder already exists, we don't want to recreate that folder. Another way to say that is, if the folder does not exist, we do want to create that folder. Sounds like a job for the if package. Let's head back to the Actions sidebar and find the if package. Then drag the if command right before our folder create command on line 2. This time, we're checking if a folder doesn't exist. So let's open the condition dropdown and scroll down to folder. There are only a couple of options here, but let's select folder does not exist. The options for that condition will appear looking almost exactly like the ones we used in our last bot. So for the folder path field, let's copy the full path to the file we're trying to create in the command on line 3. Then paste it into that field. Again, we're not expecting the folder to get created unless it's not there, so we'll leave the wait time set as 0. Now we can drag our folder create command on line 3 into this if statement, so that we know it will only get created if it doesn't already exist. So now we have a place to store each customer's visit information, but how do we track how many visits each customer has? One way we can do that is by creating a file in their folder every time they visit the store. If there are no files in the folder, then we can create one called First Visit. If that file already exists, we'll create one called Second Visit. If the Second Visit file already exists, then we know that this is the third visit, and so we'll want to print a message to the screen letting the salesperson know that this is their third visit and to give them the free gift. We'll also need to reset the count by deleting the First Visit and Second Visit files from the customer's folder. Sounds like this is a pretty complicated set of conditions, but let's start at the beginning. If the customer's folder is empty, we need to create a folder called First Visit. So let's drag an if command underneath our command on line 3. But before you let go of the mouse, take a look at what happens when you hold the command just below line 3. You'll see a dashed line that may or may not be indented depending on where your mouse is. That's because we actually have two options of where to put this command. We can either put it inside of the if statement from line 2 or outside of it. Try to get it so that the dashed line lines up with the if statement on the left-hand side, and not the folder create command, so that this check happens regardless of whether or not the customer folder exists. In the condition dropdown, let's scroll back down to the file and folder options. It doesn't look like we have any options to tell if the folder is empty or not, so how else can we do this check? If we think ahead a little bit, we'll remember that on the third visit, both the first visit and second visit files will be deleted, and the second visit file will only be created if the first visit file already exists. So, if the first visit file doesn't exist, this will be the first visit, and we need to create the first visit file. A lot of if checks can get pretty complicated once you start adding multiple conditions, so sometimes it can help to draw a picture to better understand if it starts to get confusing. So anyway, our first check will be, if the first visit file doesn't exist, create the first visit file. That means we need to select the file does not exist option. For the file path, we can go back to line 3 and copy the full path, then come back to the if statement on line 4 and paste it into that field. We'll also need to add the backslash and type first visit. Since we don't need to store any data inside of these files, we don't need to add an extension like .txt or anything like that, but it won't hurt if you decide you want to do that. Now, we need to create the first visit file inside of that if statement, so before we move on, I'm going to copy the full path to this file. Then, I'm going to go to the Actions sidebar and grab a create command from the file package and drag that inside of this if statement. I'll go ahead and paste the full path to the first visit file here. And we can leave the overwrite box alone, because this command is only going to execute if the file doesn't exist. So now we need to know how to handle creating the second visit file. This situation occurs when the second visit file doesn't exist and we didn't just create the first visit file. That means we have a bit of a weird situation here. If we put another if statement checking if the second visit file doesn't exist, then it'll still get created on a customer's first visit, because on the first visit, neither file exists yet. Fortunately, A360 lets us handle this using the else if statement that you saw earlier. Let's go grab that from the if package in the actions sidebar. We'll drag that else if command over into the workspace, and you'll notice that it's indented inside of our first visit if statement. That's because the else if statement is checked only if the check before it is false. So basically, we're first checking if the first visit file doesn't exist. If it does exist, then that first check is false, so we move on and check the next else if statement. That's perfect for our circumstances here, so let's drop that there and open up the condition drop-down and scroll back down to File and select File Does Not Exist. We can again paste the path we have copied into the file path field, but we'll need to change the name from first visit to second visit. Now we have a situation where our bot will first check if the first visit file exists or not. If it doesn't exist, then we create it. But if it does exist already, we check if the second visit file exists or not. If the second visit file doesn't exist, then we need to create it. So let's copy the file create command on line 5. Click on line 6 and then paste the command so that it ends up inside of our else if statement. Again, we'll need to change the name of the file to second visit before we move on. Finally, we need to set up an if statement in case this is the customer's third visit, meaning that the first visit and second visit files both already exist. We could set up an if statement with those conditions, but instead, let's try using the else command from the if package. When we drag this over from the actions sidebar, it functions a lot like the else if command, in that it's contained inside of the original if command, but it has to go at the end. That's because this else command has no conditions. This situation only occurs if the other if and else if commands inside of this tree are all false. So if we look at the order of operations here after we drop the command in, we'll see that it first checks if the first visit file does not exist. It does, so it'll move on and check if the second file doesn't exist. This one also exists, so it'll move on and do whatever is in this else command. That's exactly what we want. So in our else statement, we'll need to delete both visit files and print a message on the screen that tells the salesperson to give the customer the free gift. Let's start by going back to the actions sidebar, finding the file package and grabbing a delete command. Drag that inside of the else command on line 8. We can copy this command and then paste it so that we have two of them. Then, we can open up each of the file create commands that we have on lines 5 and 7 so that we can grab the full paths for first visit and second visit and paste them into each of these delete commands. When you're done, you should have one command that deletes the first visit file and then a second one that deletes the second visit file. The last thing we need to do is add our message box. So let's head over to the Actions sidebar and find the message box command. We'll drag this over to the workspace, but be careful to put it inside of the else command so that it's indented at the same level as the file delete commands. For the message to display field, let's put, "This is the customer's third visit. Please give them a free gift." Once that's done, we're all set to test it out, so let's click Run. For these tests, I'm going to use the same customer ID each time so that we can watch what happens. So, when the prompt window appears, type in 123 and then press OK. The bot will just end, but we can open our CD14 folder from the desktop. and we should see a folder called 123. If we open that folder, we should see a file called First Visit. Now, let's go back to our bot and run it again. I'll use 123 as the customer ID again once the prompt window appears, and then press OK. Again, the bot will end, and we can open up the 123 folder to see that there's now a second visit file. Let's run the bot one last time. The prompt window appears and we again use 123 as the customer ID. But this time, when we click OK, a message appears telling us that this is the customer's third visit and to give them a free gift. While we still have this message box up, if we open up the 123 folder again from the desktop, we'll see that our bot deleted both the first visit and second visit files, effectively resetting our count so that the customer will get notified about another free gift 3 more visits from now. Our bot's working just like we want it to. Great work! And that's it. Now you know the basic details of the if package, how to perform actions if a file or folder does or doesn't exist. We also learned how to use multiple conditions with the else if statement, as well as a default condition with the else statement. Remember that bots check those conditions in order, so be careful and think about how the bot will interpret your conditions before you implement them. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. For more RPA training, check out the next video here, or watch everything in order right here. Subscribe to my channel for updates on new content, and become a patron to get access to personalized RPA support. But until next time, I'm Jordan at Afterburner Automation, and I hope this helps you build better bots.